And we are live. Hi everyone. This is William again, still in my kitchen like yesterday. Today I'm going to be cooking with Atila and the rest of you in the comments. And we have Atila here. He's a senior developer experience engineer. Um,
Yeah.
just 1 second.
Okay.
Um, I could hear myself, Atila. I don't know where the sound is coming from.
I had everything turned off. Um, sorry. Oh,
No worries. That happens.
I'm muted now.
Yeah, I can still hear myself for some reason. Okay, this is interesting. There's sound coming from somewhere, like in my ears, but I don't know where.
I can hear you too. So yeah, I think you're. Are you watching the stream perhaps? In
No, I'm
another
I'm not
tab?
I'm not yeah, I'm not watching the stream. Okay. Maybe I'll wait, let me remove. This is super weird. Okay. Let me remove this. I can still hear myself. Okay, I think something I would try is to stop sharing screen, my screen at least, and see. Could you also stop sharing your screen? Yeah, and I can still hear myself. So is this a problem with StreamYard? Okay, I need to let me mute this side and see if I can still hear myself. And yes, I can still hear myself. Okay. Let me close all browser windows and see what happens then. Okay, I think it's solved now. I probably had the stream open somewhere. So I will just bring you back, Attila. Yeah, everything sounds fine now. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, I definitely had the stream open somewhere. So yes, we are back. And can you hear me properly now, Attila?
Yes, perfectly, loud and clear.
And I can't hear you at all.
What? So,
Okay, yeah, we're good
can you
now.
now? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so apologies everyone for I think we had some technical issues considering we tested for like what 15 minutes before the stream started. Yeah. But anyways, welcome to the stream today. And I have with me here, I have Atila. Atila is a senior developer experience engineer at Zata. And just to give you a rundown of what to expect today, we would have Attila going over how to manage databases in scalable Jamstack applications. After that, we would entertain questions from everyone and we would proceed to have the next talk, which is with myself and Colby. And typically, we will be talking about how to stay consistent as a technical writer, and also a very hot topic, a topic I really care about, which is how to source titles. It's one thing to write, but it's another thing to know what to write. So I would leave the floor for Attila now, and Attila, you could share your screen afresh if you have to, and I will just add it to the stream.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, it's not live streaming if there is not like any little technical issues, right? So yeah, so as William said, nice to meet you all. My name is Attila, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about handling, managing databases and handling data in scalable Jamstack apps. And before we actually get started, I'd love if um, some of you help me test the comments here. So I have your comments turned on here on the screen, and if you can just share to me where you're watching this from, that would be nice. Like a country, whatever you feel like it. Just send me a heads up, and I love seeing this and makes me chill that there's that I'm actually talking to people, not talking to my webcam over here because that's a little bit worse. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot. Nice. Nigeria, Norway, Ghana. Cool. Mombasa from Kenya. Amazing. I hope I said that right. Yeah. Um, awesome. So, yeah, let's get started because there's a lot to show and we actually don't have that much time. So, yeah, first of all, again, my name is Atila. I work at Zara. I'm a developer experience engineer. That essentially means that my daily work and my main task is to make sure that people like you feel comfortable and happy while using Zata. And you can find me at my website, attila.io. You can also use like slash YouTube, Twitter, or GitHub to find me on many social medias. Basically, I'm Atila Fassina. That's my last name everywhere. So if you don't want to use my shortcuts, you can also just poke that straight in the address bar. You're going to find me, and that's it. So when we're talking about Jamstack, I think it's nice to take a step back, especially when you're talking about databases and talk about serverless. What does this actually mean? So first of all, this is like some people consider that a misnomer in the sense that the word doesn't mean what the word is actually saying. So it's a bad naming in the sense that it implies there is no server, when in fact there are many servers. But the point is that there's no server for us, the user, people to actually handle them. So in serverless, in the sense that you don't need to maintain them, somebody else is. So that's why you have like um, platform as a service kind of providers like Netlify and things like that. And based on this serverless architecture is where the Jamstack comes from, right? And the serverless architecture is also where we deposit like everything that we do in Zata, more or less, and what Zata is actually standing for. So the Jamstack, the Gem in the Jamstack is actually an acronym, which some of you may already know. So the J stands for JavaScript, or in that, for most of us, actually TypeScript, I guess. And the A stands for APIs, and the M stands for markup. So in this talk, and what Zata is all about is handling the A part of the Jamstack. So handling the APIs, or more specifically, the data of your application. So one short second. So to explain, like to get a gist about what actually is Jamstack, we are going to have a look at um, like a little diagram that I'd like to draw with you. So first of all, as front-end developers, um, we actually build an app, and then this app is full of JavaScript in many cases, and the markup. So here you can see the J and the M of the Jamstack. So essentially, what the Jamstack defends is we're going to serve like the static content from whatever server we get, and then whenever we hit the client side, the browser, we are going to hydrate that with JavaScript whenever we need, and the JavaScript is actually going to manage the logic of our application. So it's going to handle if data needs to be updated, if there is some state change or things like that. And then what we put on top of it, like with serverless functions or even with like full-blown servers, are the microservice architecture, where the backend actually encapsulates whatever they need to do in little containers, so to speak, or little services that have hopefully only one responsibility. So you can have one service to manage like translations, for example, another service to handle some comments in your blog posts or stuff like that. So you have a bunch of microservices, and those are actually the A. So those are the APIs. But then when we're creating like enterprise level or more complex stuff, apps, we end up needing to handle like a big data layer. So these are essentially when there's the data that we are responsible for, and that like our own app data. So like login data, where we're going to store like user information, um, analytics, maybe this kind of stuff. How we're going to handle the bulk of the data that needs to live on a backend, and where those microservices are going to get the data from. And this big green data, this big green box of data is actually not described how to be managed on the Jamstack paradigm. Um, but there are a few solutions already, and um, this is more or less where we are going to be dealing for the next 40 minutes, about how to create this kind of data. These are usually the kind of stuff that companies have a whole team for, but entertain me for one moment here, and let's see how it goes. So whenever we're creating an app, most apps, we start, okay, so we need to handle this data. So first of all, we're going to add a database. And then our app starts growing. So we need to scale this database. We can scale it vertically in most cases. So whenever we get this machine where this database is living, and we add more RAM, we add more CPU, we add more power to it, or we can scale horizontally. So we're going to make it available in different parts, in different places. And we're actually going to divide this data in all these databases to make things easier to fetch or query and so on, to make performance better. So whenever we do that, at some point things start getting slow for our API. So then we introduce something that's called KV store. So some of you may know a few popular KV store. The most popular one is probably Redis. So these are essentially like these very tend to be very fast databases that have a key and a value. So you have a very simple way of querying stuff, and they essentially work as a caching layer between your actual database and the APIs you need to query for. And then at some point you start getting more and more data, and you need to handle like what are your users are actually going to be doing when they need to find data in your app. And then we say, okay, I need to create some sort of search. And then you need to implement this kind of search, because a database, like the search in the database, are not ready for this kind of like big amounts of data and so on. So whenever your app starts growing and you start getting a bunch of requests, you need to introduce some queuing system like Kafka or whatever. And so you need to put like, you already have like database, which can be Postgres, MySQL, whatever. You have Redis on top of it to make the queries fast. And now you're adding Kafka to manage your Elasticsearch. So that's a whole big thing. So let's go back now to what our Jamstack is whenever we're starting to grow. So we have this like two APIs now, and these two APIs behind our app are connecting to this KV store, connecting to Redis. And Redis is connecting to our database that connects to Kafka, which is a queue that connects to Elasticsearch to make sure that our data is accessible and fast. Anybody feeling like this right now? That's a lot, right? That's a lot to maintain. Especially like, and if you look at like this application that just started, like very ergonomic and very pleasurable to build, like it's really fun to develop Jamstack apps. So you go on and you handle like your state first, you handle all your application first, you're out of the box with Netlify or other data providers, platform providers, and you're deploying it easy. You get continuous integration, you get continuous deployment. You're deploying like these little serverless functions to handle data to multiple APIs. You're connecting to a bunch of data points, but suddenly you want to own your own data. You need some data that you need to own, and you're handling all this stuff. That's a lot. Luckily, that's what Zata is for. What we are doing at Zeta is actually abstracting the complexity of all this for people to be able to manage this data and think on how their data is going to look like and how their apps are going to interact with their data. So we can actually solve some questions for you. We can, the first questions you need to answer, for example, when you're starting to manage your data: is my database going to be relational or no relation? I'm going to use MySQL, NewSQL, whatever SQL, or Postgres, or like whatever. How am I going to handle the caching history story? So which kind of queries am I going to store? Because if I'm at some point, I need to like cache those kind of queries to make it faster and to be able to provide these fast access to my user across the globe. How am I going to deal with failover and replication of this data that's being cached? How am I going to handle migrations? How am I going to handle migrations? How am I going to handle whenever I'm updating this data, or am I going to change my schema with my app going on? Hands up, like I cannot see your hands, but hands up if you ever had to deal with migrations and suddenly you're confused about getting the right time to handle all the downtime that's necessary. So we aim to get you like to no downtime migrations, because we're behind an API. How we're going to implement the search, like implementing Elasticsearch and queues and make sure the availability is there. And then you get security. So handling data security is also really important, because with all these things running wild and you're maintaining all this, you still need to be able to ensure privacy, especially on this GDPR era. We need to be able to do security. So the point is, we at Zeta, we were kind of tired to see every team handling all these discussions at some point, because every one of us, like if we've been to companies that grew their product to a certain degree, we saw this happening. We saw the moment that, okay, we need to handle this data, and we saw like teams being created just to handle this kind of stuff. And these decisions are decisions that need to be made early on, otherwise and they cannot be changed easily. So we decided, okay, so we're going to have this team that's dedicated and we're going to build this platform for it. And these questions and other questions that you have are going to be solved out of the box. So this is the service we're going to provide to people. We're going to manage that to you. And that's where we go to borrowing the terminology of serverless, where serverless is when you actually use servers that you don't need to maintain. We can say databaseless, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. Hashtag databaseless, I guess. But if you look again at all that thing that I was showing, where you have like the data layer, you have the caching layer, you have the queuing system, the search, maybe even analytics at some point, it's not really database, right? It's more of a data platform because you get the database, you get the search, and you get APIs for it. Yes, that's right. So you don't need you actually on Zeta you don't actually need to do like MySQL queries or Postgres queries, or like you don't do queries straight to the database. What we're offering is is something that we are behind an API, and that's why we can provide you with this kind of service. Because we're behind an API, you don't even need to worry if you are doing like NoSQL or MySQL. We're of giving you all the guarantees that you would with one, and we can aim to give you all the performance that you have with the other. So you can actually get by hitting an API, and that's like the most familiar structure that every Jamstack developer has. You can actually do databases. You can handle database. You can create schemas without needing to write queries. So going back at it, you have all those microservices. You have your app. You have the Jamstack JavaScript there on the client side, handling the states and sending requests to microservices, and you have this like little um, special microservice, which is just another API. It's a REST API. You have an SDK. You have a library that you're going to connect to it. And because we are owning your schema and because we are behind an API, we can afford to give you the endpoints, and we can afford to give you like type generation and type safety between your front end and your back end. So we actually have a TypeScript first SDK that we are going to see in a minute. So yeah, let me know on the comments here if you folks like TypeScript, because I'm about to show you some stuff. Because after all, and I'm really sorry for the bad pun, that's what I do. Yeah, so it's a hackathon, not a talkathon. So I'm going to stop talking now, and we are going to start hacking. So now I'm going to switch my screen to my terminal. And at any moment in the comments, let me know if the font's too small, if it's hard to see, whatever. I'm looking at the comments right now, so interrupt me anytime if you have questions. If I'm going too fast, if I'm going too slow, let me know. The point here is that you folks um, are um, are acquainted to what is the developer experience in Zata, and my goal is to empower you to create nice stuff and ship great content. So first of all, we have this. We have our official Next.js starter. So if you folks are not familiar, Next.js is this React-based framework that's very widely used in the JavaScript, in the Jamstack ecosystem. So it does some server-side rendering, a bunch of stuff, and it has in this CLI that's called Create Next App. We can pass some examples. So we already have thanks a lot, Nakam. We already have this with Zeta template or official example. So you can just type npx, or if you do yarn create or pnpm dlx, and you can call the create next app, pass this flag, which is like dash e or double dash examples. Sorry, let me just bump the font. Is that better, Aaron? So we're about to pop out of the terminal. I'm just showing you that we have this with Zeta example. I already ran it because I don't want you to watch me do it perform npm install for me. And after we do that, we can jump into VS Code. So whenever you get stuck, what? No, that's the wrong VS Code window. So let me go again and blogs. So I just started this blogs, and whenever we start with it, we get a bunch of stuff with this template. So now I'm on my VS Code. Can everybody see it good? Is it nice to see? I can bump up the fonts a little bit more. And for VS Code, like what Next.js does is by default, it runs yarn install. And you get a few stuff out of here. So in this example, you also get this Next.js with data example. So you have like this mock database. And we have for you a few tasks. So this is start Zeta is going to initialize your database with this schema, and it's going to push some stuff to your Zata workspace, and then you'll be good to go. But we're not going to be using this one at this demo. So we're going to be creating our own. And then what this template also gives you is some of the ways to interact with our clients. So this is already using the code generation that we're about to see. And you get the Zeta client, and you can see you have some stuff here, which I'm about to demo you a little bit further. So now let's go back to our wait. So let's go back to our web browser. So whenever you log into Zata, this is something you'll see. This is my workspace. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to provision a database. So I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to add a new database. I'm going to pick it purple. And I'm going to call it blogs because that's the name of the blog I'm just creating. So with that, I click and boom, I have a database. Now my database is empty. I have anything here. So I'm going to come to add a table, and I want to create a demo database. So this is like this demo schema. So I have a blog here. You can see over here that I have a post and the users, and each user can be an author. So this is actually pointing out some relationship that I have. So every author is actually a user. So if I come over here to my posts, I can see that I have the author name is Eddie Abbott. And if I come to my users, I have Eddie Abbott over here. So I can link to every post, like every author has one. And that's it. Now I have a database. So I can go back to VS Code over here. And what I need to do now is connect this project that I have to that database that I just created. So for this, what I'm going to do is come over here, and we have this VS Code extension. So the VS Code extension is an interface that we can manage our database straight from the VS Code app. Can I zoom in to the... Sorry, David, can I zoom in a little bit more? Like this? Let me know if VS Code's clear, because we're going to spend some time here. And now back over here. So I have, like, whenever I install it, I get this this thing on the my Zeta icon, which we call a Zeta fly, in my gutter. And whenever I click here, I can get all my databases. So these are actually my databases over here. So they are my workspaces. So on my VS Code, I have all my workspaces here. what I'm going to do is actually click Get Started. And these are going to prompt me to all my workspaces, and I'm going to link to my demos. And in my demos, I can pick the database that I want to link it to. Whenever I click blogs, you can see I can have my same tables over here. So I have my users table. As you can see, here's Eddie over here. And if I come here to see my post table, I have all the posts over here as well. Cool. And then what the VS Code extension did, it created the .m file, which I'm not going to show you in the streaming because this has my Zeta access token. And it also create the .zrc, which is essentially a JSON that has the URL to my database. So this is what my CLI and my SDK are going to use. Okay, Zata was not visible. Okay, I'll make sure I check again when we go back. But now we're going to spend some time here on the VS Code. So this .zrc are actually the configuration that our CLI is going to use to generate the stuff we need. So besides the database URL, we are going to have the output. No, I'm sorry. We're going to have the codegen configuration, and the codegen has this output where I'm going to say that I want to put that on my lib folder, and I'm going to prefix this to codegen. This is like my personal preference. A lot of people don't, but I like to make it explicit that this specific file that is going to show and that I'm going to version, I'm going to push that to GitHub. I want to make explicit that this file is generated on a command, because every time I change my schema, every time I create a new column, every time I update a new table, I'm going to run the codegen again, and this codegen and this file is going to be overwritten, so I cannot change anything in this file. So I save this, and now here we are. We see we don't have this lib folder yet, but I have here in my package JSON, I have this command that I named Zata. You can name whatever you want. You can name Zata codegen or whatever you want. So this command is going to call my CLI and is going to run the codegen. The CLI is something that's coming installed by default in this template. We don't exactly recommend that you do that. It's going to make your life easier if you interact with the CLI to have it globally installed in your system. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to use this one for this demo. So I'm going to open my terminal now, and I'm going to, because this project's using Yarn, I'm going to call Yarn Zata. And what's going to see, it's going to call this, and it's going to say, okay, I generated this thing, my Zata client in this Zata codegen TS. And you see the folder just appeared over here. And I come here, and you see that I have my tables over here. I have all the types. So this is my database schema. Everything that is created, all the types, the date time. I have the relation described over here, and it's also creating the types. So now you can, for example, just come over here to your to whatever serverless function you have. And this is actually not true anymore. I cannot do this. But then if I start connecting to my database, TypeScript needs some help over here. So this is going to actually give me the autocomplete. My types are not updating, but this is going to give you the autocomplete that you need for this. And I'm going to show you now how to create these queries and connect to your database from here. So this is it. You linked your database, you have all the connections you need, you have codegen working, and you have a Next.js app ready to go. So now let's see what Zata can do for you. So I'm heading over back to Zata, and I'm going to open this thing over here. So this is my workspace, and here we can do a bunch of stuff. You can actually create queries without writing code. So let me show you, for example, if I want to get my posts, and you see here these posts, you don't need to go reading those posts, but let me make it a little bit bigger. So these posts, they are ordered by ID. What I want actually is to sort them by the newest. I want the newest first and then the latest, the oldest. So first the latest post that I wrote and then the oldest. So you see these already updated. And now what I want to do is get this code snippet, which is going to suggest me, okay, so you can set up your data, but we already did that. And I can come here and I want all my posts paginated and I want them sorted like this. So with this, I can actually use the SDK, which is the one we use, or you can use a JavaScript, or you can use Shell. So everything is ready for us to do. So for example, if I come for JavaScript, I can say, okay, I just want a regular fetch. And this is going to generate this ephemeral access token. So I can copy it here. If I open my browser, I can run this on any JavaScript environment. I can post it here. And oh, yeah. And then my promise, and then the promise is going to show up over here. And I can get the results from this. Oops, I need to include the temporary keys. That's the problem. So yeah. So here you go. So now I have all the records. So I have all my posts here, and I didn't write a single line of code. I have this. I have this query working just as I created over there. But yeah, so if you also want to play around on the playground, for example, you can come to this SDK playground where we can actually run queries. So this is essentially the same thing that you get on your code after the code gen, but this is the playground is ready for you. So we can go Zeta and then DB, and I can say, okay, I'm going to query all my posts, and I want to get, I don't know, the first post. And that's it. So the first post in my database, I can run the query over here, and I can see, oh, I didn't console log. So now I run this and I get my first post. I can also do the good old sorting. So I can come sort, and I can say sort by so sort by created at, and I want it to be descendant. So now I get my newest post. And this is just playing with that, with this one. And so I mentioned before, you also get search. We get Elasticsearch built in. So for example, let's go back to our posts and let's get from the text over here. I want to get like a random word. So this one, and I'm going to come to my search and I want to search a term. So you can see here that I have all the highlighted terms of my search. So the same word that I just queried, and I have this relevance. So what does this mean? This means that we can each result is actually ranked. So we can come here and add a booster, for example. So I want to add a date booster. I'm going to get, I want my freshest post to actually show higher. So as you can see, as I change this, I get the post ranking higher because this one is latest. We can also change the fuzziness search. So this is, for example, if I have a typo, all my results disappear. But if I come here and I upgrade my fuzziness, it starts tolerating typos in my search terms. And all this is also ready to be queried. So I can come here and say, okay, I want to use this straight in the search of my blog. So I can just come here and I have my query written out for me. It also works straight up in the playground, where I can come over and let's delete this. And now what I want to do is some search results, and I want to do a Zeta search. And inside this search, what I'm going to do is pass the term, and this is the term. And oh wait, do it. No. Let me go back because this is different. Search. Oh, I forgot the keyword. Yeah. See, it's very good to have that kind of code snippet, because if you're nervous doing some live coding, you can always get a little help. And now we're going to log the search results. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to describe that I want to search this in which tables. So the first table that I'm going to do is posts. And I'm going to define here fuzziness of my search. So I want my fuzziness to be 1. And I want also, for example, to add some boosters. So I want a date booster, and this date booster is going to be, no, wait, I want a numeric booster this time. And I want it to be, so you can set up the boosters over here as well. So you have the numeric boosters, you have the date boosters, and you have all of these other ones over here. So you have the exact value booster in the column booster. So for example, the date one is a mouthful, and we can also get you can actually combine those boosters. So if I come over here, I can set the date one for the post credit and the post views as well. And then you can define how relevant those is. So the post with the most views actually get first. And then I'm just going to copy this and we can come over back here and you can get both of the boosters over. So we're saying in which column we're applying the numeric booster. So we're applying to the views column and we're applying to the a factor of 2. And then you can play around with it and see the results. Once you're done, you can just copy this over here, go back to your code, and paste whenever you want. So this is, and this is how you get the search working. So yes, so this is a little bit of the demo that I had for you folks. And back to my presentation now. I want to leave you folks with a few links that I'm going to also paste it over there. So if you get, I'm going to paste the link of this presentation over, and all of these links are clickable inside the slides, but I'm also going to paste the slides over there. And you get like our docs, you get our Discord, you have also the examples repository, which is definitely open source and open to get contributions. So besides this Next.js example, we have another one with authentication. We have other ones. We have other ones with Remix, for example, deploying to Netlify as well. And we have a few samples coming up. Every kind of contribution is always welcome, of course. And we also have this very nice YouTube video that is a walkthrough. It's essentially a similar demo to the one I just gave you right now, where you can just go on and watch and go back, go forward. This one is presented by one of my colleagues called Tejas Kumar. So yeah, different way, similar stuff, same product. And thank you very much for having me. You can find us at Zeta on Twitter, or you can find the rest of my team as well. So I go by Atila Fassina, Tejas Kumar _ and Fabian0102. You can find us, tweet at us, poke us on Discord, let us know if you run into anything. I'm going to now open up for questions, and I'll try to answer all of them. So the first one by Aaron: can Zara work like common content management systems like Strapi and Contentful, where communication can be done via REST APIs call? Yes. So the point is, I actually have a little article on is Meshing magazine. So I have this little series. Oops, that's not the right link. It's not authors, it's author. So I wrote a few posts for them, and I'm actually writing this series where we talk a little bit about what databases are and how to handle them for front-end development, and I compare them at this point with content management systems. Essentially, content management systems are special kind of database that are focused on handling content. That being said, if you want to create your own, you're going to need a database, and you can create your own CMS using Zeta. You just need to handle all the data types and handle the strings parsing and validation and whatever else you would expect from a CMS. But essentially, yes, you can do that. And without the SDK or any local setup, like you would need some kind of local setup, I guess, to communicate with the database. But the SDK is not mandatory. The SDK is supposed to help you with the ergonomics. The SDK is going to help you have the type safety between your API calls and your client side. It's going to help you connect to the database and manage the branches, because you can also branch your schema. So the SDK is supposed to help you with the ergonomics, but if you want to ditch the SDK completely, you can actually come over here. If you remember when I showed you the code snippets, you actually have an option to use without the SDK. So you have like a regular fetch call. So these, like if you use this endpoint, it will essentially work. What the SDK is going to do is help you pass the right parameters and define what is the right endpoint to call based on the action you want to perform on your data. How does Zeta authentication works? We don't have authentication as a service per se. What we do have is some stories on integrating with. We have some stories for integrating with NextAuth. There's also one that we're cooking about integrating with Clerk. And we also have a NextAuth adapter coming up soon. It's ready to be merged. We're just doing the final reviews on the NextAuth app. So we also have over here in our example apps, you see we have one with basic authentication. But yeah, it's not a service that we offer out of the box for people. So you can accomplish that. Like this is actually a to-do app. So you can just see how it goes, and you can change from basic auth to a JWT based. We have a demo that we're about to ship with that. Yes, you can definitely have the links of my blog posts. Let me go back here. I cannot post on the comments for some reason, but I'm sure William can help me out with that. So I'm going to paste it over to him. These are all my posts, and they are going to be shared here. I can also share them on Discord. No, Zeta is not read-only from the application, but I strongly recommend you, and I cannot stress that enough, that your connection to write data and actually even fetch data needs to be on the backend, so you don't expose your tokens. So from the client side, it's ideal that you have some kind of proxy. If you see what we do here on this example app, we actually encourage you to use the get server side props or the get static props from Next.js when you're connecting to Zata, and use the API routes, because what we want is that your app has the access token, but your client doesn't. So any connection to the database needs to be done by the backend. That's default for pretty much every app. What we do, because Zata is essentially a database, even though it's behind an API, you still need to pass those tokens. So it's important that you do that from the backend. But yeah, if your application has a backend layer, you can do read, writes, updates, everything from there. Can one add image uploads to Cloudinary from Zata? Yes. So what we're going to do right now is that you don't have the image or the file data type. What you're going to do is basically upload whatever your image to Cloudinary, and you can store the image URL from Cloudinary in your Zeta database. We're actually working together into creating some easier integration. So I think you met Colby yesterday. So my team and Colby's team are talking into making this integration a little bit easier and seamless. And my team is also working on the data image type as well. Oh, Colby's there. Hi, Colby. Yes. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Awesome.
You just talked about Zata and Cloudinary, and I'm curious, is it going to be possible to search for an image using Zeta's, search engine on, say, an image that's stored on Cloudinary? Because I really
Well,
love the search function.
so I think we already talked a little bit about creating integration. So you asking me that is a good indicator of the kind of stuff we need to build. I think both of us in Zeta and Cloudinary want to give a best developer experience we can. So if that's something that becomes a priority, if a lot of people using Cloudinary want to use Zeta and people using Zeta want to integrate with Cloudinary, we are going to work on the most ergonomic way of doing that. So yes, we can have that. We just need to be sure to allow
That's
someone to search for the tags on a media object. That's definitely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question I have is you've shared, a lot of resources, but what is the one resource you would recommend for anyone that's new to Zeta to, try it out? Where should they go to first?
So the first one that I would recommend is we are really working hard on having our docs in the best looking way possible, and we are working very hard into making them clear and objective and straight to the point. We have a quick start tutorial there already that's creating a to-do app with basic auth, and there's even a video there already. There's this recent video from the walkthrough that I shared before that it's very fresh out of the oven. They just shared that with me earlier today. So I totally recommend you to start with that. Like he's demoing everything I just did here in about 10 minutes. Um, so I totally recommend you starting with those. And again, like we have a dedicated channel for people building stuff on our Discord. So even if you're not sure about what to build, you can start from there and ask us like, look, I want to like leverage whatever Zeta has to offer. I want to build with this or that stack. We can connect you with someone or we can help you ourselves. Even if you're out of ideas, we are all like focused on creating content as well. Like I write a lot for Smashing Magazine and on my personal stuff. My team is working hard on creating like nice content for people to actually learn how to use Zara. So we know the struggle of finding the right topic and the right example for what you want to teach. So you can just poke us at any time. So it really depends on what's the point you're waiting for. Like we're here to help. Start from the docs if you already know what to build. If you want some like big ideas, you can go through the walkthrough to see, like, to have a big scope of what we can offer. And if you're completely lost about what you can do with a database, and what Zeta has to offer, just jump in our Discord and ask. So Chris has another question. Looking at the documentation, database can be deployed on Netlify, which means one can use the Cloudinary plugin on Netlify. So you cannot actually, like, we don't have a way for you to deploy the database. So because our database is behind an API, there's no like on-prem way. So you're not deploying the database. What we do is essentially like you deploy a serverless function on Netlify, and you can from that serverless function connect to the database. But the database, like, we still own, like, we need to own that because we need to give you we need to give you support for the scalability. We need to scale vertically or horizontally. We need to be able to give you the search. If you would deploy everything, then we would not be abstracting the complexity for you. So you would still need to maintain all that, and that's kind of defeats our goal, which is to make databases easier for people to build stuff, and I dare say even fun. I have fun. Maximum size allocating for a media upload in general. So we don't have media upload yet. The general database size is very high, especially at the moment where we're still in closed beta. So you're all going to get like early access, which I'm about to like send some invites right after this talk, as soon as William tells me that I have the green light to do that. So you need to poke him if you want earlier. Um, but yeah, so I think if you're going to store the images on Cloudinary, that's a question for Colby. Um, yeah, so you can, what Colby's saying, you can store the database, the Cloudinary URL, and that's like very low for us. So you can, I don't know, you can, like, you cannot go too much. Yes, so we are going to have a free plan, definitely. And I don't know yet exactly. I cannot promise you what are going to be the limits. What I can promise you is that every small to even to mid-sized apps are going to comfortably fit our free plan, so you don't need to worry. You're only going to be, definitely, if you are going to hit the ceiling of our free plan, is definitely because you already have an enterprise grade app and you're already making money. So yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Attila. This has been great. I really love the search function. Search is definitely one of the more difficult um, features to build into any application, and it's good to see that ship out of the box with Zeta.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Um,
there's more coming. So I focus on the things that were more practical, but like you have other stuff like branching. You can basically branch your schema just like GitHub branches, and eventually you're going to be able to like do these migrations instantly. So there's a lot of stuff if you're like a database expert, I would say, or if you're interested in that, to poke around, pop the hood, ask us questions. There's a lot to talk about, and we're always happy to do so. So yeah.
yeah. Thank you very much for that. And to the audience, Attila is going to be on Discord, so you can always like ask any questions you have. If you're finding it difficult to use, any portions of Zeta, he's available to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, after this, Attila would invite everyone to try out Zeta. As for the hackathon, we will be building with Zeta and Cloudinary. So we would all need access. So Attila, yeah, you have the go ahead to invite everyone to.
Yeah, but only click the link after the next presentation because I don't want William to be mad at me. So I'm going to send the invites now, but you can only see after the presentations.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you very much, Attila. At least we get
Yeah, thank
access.
you.
Yeah. And I hope to see you on Discord and we keep hanging out there.
I'll be there. See you later. Bye
All
bye,
right.
guys.
Have a nice day. All right. That was a wonderful session by Attila. We got to learn about how Zeta works. We saw how you could use either the Zeta SDKs for TypeScript, JavaScript, or you could make a fetch request to the Zeta endpoint to fetch data. And we saw a glimpse of search, but as Attila said in the closing minutes, there are other features of Zeta that could be interesting, right? So you could check out the documentation, see what's available, and see what cool stuff you can build. As Zeta is a database, you can store just about any primitive type, any data type in the database. So as Colby said in the chat, this could be image URLs or a public ID from Cloudinary, or even some of the properties of the Cloudinary asset. So do check out Zeta, and Attila will also be on Discord, like I said. Before we go to our next session, which is going to be with Colby, let's take out some time to, put out a tweet or give a shout out to the sponsors of this event for, bringing us together to network, to learn from, brilliant folks. That would be great. And in the next couple of seconds, I would bring Colby in. Actually, I don't have to wait. I could just bring him in right now.
Yay. I feel like we're having a
Hi,
great
Colby.
conversation about Zeta and Cloudinary.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm really fascinated by search, and I know the capabilities Cloudinary has with auto tagging or even manual tagging of images, combining that with Zeta's inbuilt search functionality. That could be that's game changing.
For sure. And I would imagine, like, I don't want to speak for Zeta, but usually what I see happen is when CMSs or databases store a Cloudinary reference, what they'll do is they'll store basically a Cloudinary object, a resource object in their database. So you can kind of simulate that when working with the two until an official integration comes along.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I guess everyone is taking notes of this. And yeah,
I'm really excited to
Colby.
see what people come up with.
Yeah, I am too. I am. You just got a shout out for having the coolest shirts.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Anyways, we would kick off the next session. And the next session is something, it's a topic I really care about because I get this question a lot from a number of authors and people from the community. They come to me with the question, how do I find the next title for my blog post? How do I want to keep writing, but I don't know, what next to write. So I decided to make that the final session of this workshop series before we go dive into the hackathon proper. And to do this, we've created a couple of questions that we will be answering on this call, on this stream. Yeah, I'm used to Zoom meetings. But we have a number of questions we will be answering on this stream. And if you have any more questions, you can also ask them in comments. We will be looking and we'll take those after. So over to the 8 questions. I did justice by listing them out here, and we will just go over them. Colby will share his thoughts, and I would weigh in on some of them as well. So before we start, if you could also share some information about this stream on Twitter, you could tag Colby and you could tag myself. Colby, you want to put your Twitter handle in the chat?
Yeah, I would be happy to.
Yeah.
On the chat again. Colby Fayak everywhere.
Yeah. And at iChulo. Yeah, just type William on Twitter. They'll know I'm the one.
The only William.
Yeah. So let's try to get as many folks into the stream so people can also learn from, what we're about to share. But we'll jump straight into the first question, which is, what forms of technical content do you create, Colby? And sorry, I skipped the first part, which is supposed to be you could tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself for those that weren't here yesterday.
Sure. So yeah, let's start with that. So I'm Colby Fayak, as everybody probably knows by now. But I'm a developer experience engineer at Cloudinary. So I work from everywhere to technical content, which we're talking about today, to building integrations, proof of concepts. I mostly it revolves around the code side of things in the developer experience world. So I do what I can to help developers be productive. Hopefully that's with Cloudinary, but really I try to help them be productive with whatever they're doing.
Thank you very much, Colby. Yeah, and Colby is he likes to, would I say, underplay his skills. So definitely you should check out everything he puts. Just go to his Twitter. You're going to see a bunch of URLs. Follow
You're
those,
too
and
kind.
you'll know the realities. So going straight to this, the first question here is, what forms of technical content you create, Colby, typically?
Sure. So it's mostly around the JavaScript world. I try to do tutorials, try to solve real world use cases. Now, the tutorials I do maybe not always be practical, but I try to gear it in a way where they can solve real problems with that tutorial. So just I write my tutorials mostly at spacejelly.dev. And one of the most recent ones, for instance, looking through, so I created a blog post about updating static content in Next.js automatically and using ISR, and that's a big issue that people need to solve, especially in the Jamstack world, right? Because part of one of the downsides people used to say about the Jamstack is that it's static content. How I'm going to update it without building my entire site, and that's what ISR and what's Netlify call their solution. Either way, it's what they use to solve that, so that you can just the content will have a cache policy essentially, and then it'll automatically refresh whenever that content changes. So it really gives us the best of both worlds, where we're delivering that content statically, but we're also able to keep it nice and fresh. Anyways, that was specifically about that blog post. I don't know why I went in the weeds there, but you get the point. Like, I'm trying to solve
Yeah,
real problems with
yeah,
the blog posts.
that's cool. So you typically create blog posts. I've seen your streams, like you also do video content, right?
Yeah, so I try to do an article and video for everything I teach. I kind of just got in the habit of doing that because the way that I typically, I think we're going to cover this in another question, but what I like to do is I kind of create my article and it ends up being a script of sorts for my video. That way, like, rather than doing the video first, I can basically write down everything, I debug my way through the tutorial, whatever I need to do, and then just work my way through that written tutorial when it comes to the video.
That makes sense. I guess that's really efficient, creating one piece of content and then maximizing reach through like
Yeah,
various mediums.
exactly. And people learn differently, right? Like, I personally prefer to look up in documentation. Some people prefer to read a blog post, and a lot of people nowadays like YouTube. So I try to make sure that it's in different forms, so depending on how you learn, you're going to be able to access that.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And what motivates you to keep writing?
It's a good question. I think I just have a lot of fun with this. I'm doing it professionally now, so part of it's like it's part of my role, but I don't have to do this content, but I really enjoy doing it. I enjoy kind of the satisfaction of seeing that I help somebody solve their own problem, right? So the way
Yeah,
I always see it in my mind is that I'm multiplying my impact by helping other people become productive.
yeah, that's really cool. Impact at scale.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how frequently do you create content? Do you do this weekly, every other day? I know I see the work rate, but I want to place a number to it.
So it used to be once a week I would have something out, but just because of the work that's been on my plate lately for work, I haven't quite hit those numbers. It's close to probably once a week, but not quite once a week anymore.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And just weighing in a bit on, what motivates us to write. For the more junior folks on the stream, I would say starting out, one of the things that, you know, got me to write more frequently was trying to cement knowledge, right? So I needed a firm grasp of whatever I was learning. At that time, I would write about JavaScript methods, .map, .filter, .splice, right? And I wrote them. And the funny thing was, I would get a lot of views and visits from some other beginner somewhere halfway across the world that also has like a similar problem or is looking for a simpler explanation to JavaScript methods. So a good part of the motivation I had then was to cement my knowledge and just to help someone out there.
It's interesting because when you're first learning a topic, you're going to have a different perspective on that topic than somebody who's very experienced, right? So being able to
Yeah,
empathize with them is a great way to help the other person learn as well. But also, as you're writing about these things and learning, there's this kind of terminology, learning in public, which I know Swix, if you're familiar with Swix, he always talks
yeah,
about that. But um, the great thing about learning in public is you're kind of holding yourself accountable, but also potential employers are seeing you learn these things. You need to, like, this is a way to separate yourself from other people, because maybe if you're going against one other person in a job search, right, if you have this nice portfolio of content showing that you're eager to continue learning and building new things versus somebody who doesn't have anything like that, you have a little bit more weight in that running, right?
yeah, yeah, very true. Very, yeah. That's something I would say definitely helped personally with my career was, creating content. And once you create written content, you get invited to speak about what you just wrote, right? So that even um, amplifies your reach. And to the next question, how do you source content titles and ideas? What are your go-to, strategies for that?
Yeah, so I have a never-ending list. Really, I don't have like a specific strategy on how I generate the ideas. It's just if
Hmm.
I try to, if I'm anywhere, if I'm taking a walk, if I'm, playing with my kid and all of a sudden an idea pops up, I try to make sure I write it so I don't forget it. Otherwise I will forget it. But, as I keep adding more and more to that list, so now I have a giant list of different topics that I eventually think would be interesting to write about. Anytime that I want to write something, I take a look at that list and see what pops out with me. Part of keeping that motivation is I do have fun with this. So I don't want to force myself to write about a topic that I'm not excited about at the time. So something's bound to jump off at that list of me, get me motivated and want to write about it. And it just makes it more fun and easy to work through that content.
That makes sense. If I hear you correctly, maintaining a list or creating a list of blog posts is very important to, having a constant stream of
Yeah.
content.
And also, like, if you're on Twitter or Discord or wherever you're at, if you see somebody talking about something that they find challenging and you think you can solve that, write it in a blog post or at least add it to the list of ideas. Because if somebody else has a challenge with that, it's likely other people will too. And if you can help them solve that, you have a winning article there.
Yeah, that's very correct. I think on my end, how I find titles, first I used to have or I have this list on Trello with like number of posts from 2017. Some of them I haven't written.
Yeah.
And I'm as a technical writer, I'm very intentional about finding, the problems that people are having with technologies and, wanting to write about them. So first, I would forage in communities, go to the help channels of different communities, especially JavaScript focused ones, to find out what issues are they, talking about the most, right? Especially as it regards that technology.
Yeah.
So if I go to like, say, I go to Zeta's community and I go to the Ask Anything or the Help channel, and I find out what are the, the top questions people or the top things people are unclear about. I decide to write a blog post from that, right? Or I add it to like a queue. Same thing to apply to Cloudinary. And another way I get titles are from building stuff. So when I build something, they are the things I find the most difficult, right? Those I know for sure I'm going to write a blog post about them, because if I found it very difficult, someone else is going to find it
Great
difficult.
point.
And yeah, so when I'm building, I try as much as possible to log those things I find really difficult. And then there are certain things that are not difficult, but they are often overlooked. It could be the solution to a very simple error or even a warning, right? I would log those as well, as they require blog post. When I started, there were also some pretty simple things that, you wouldn't readily find blog posts about, because people find them, or people think they are too simple to write a blog post. That's also another misconception I've seen. Something as seemingly easy as browser storages, most people or most engineers would feel, writing about local storage, how to use local storage, yeah, that should be pretty straightforward. Well, for those starting out, it's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think this rolls into Attila made a great point in the chat there that every blog post is unique. And that he's absolutely right there, where your perspective may be the one thing that somebody else needs in order to learn something better.
yeah. That's true, 100%. And I also mentioned something like this yesterday. When you write a blog post, Google will always favor the more recent version of that blog post. If they have even exactly the same content, the more recent one will rank higher. You would even find a lot of content marketing organizations and teams repost blog posts they shared some couple of years ago. If it's still relevant, they repost them so they rank even higher. So if someone, or if someone already has written a post about some problem, but you have a unique perspective to it, just go ahead and write that. You definitely help someone out there. Another great source of content, I still do that till today, is going to Stack Overflow.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, I feel if developers go to Stack Overflow to find solutions to problems, then maybe I could turn those solutions into blog posts. So that's how I found the homepage of Stack Overflow to even start with. I never knew they had like a homepage. Right? So I would go to Stack Overflow, put in like a query or a term. More recently, I started looking at Upright. So I would go to Stack Overflow, just type in Upright, rank the search by the most upvoted, and see what folks are asking about, how to maybe manage database or how to handle authentication. What does a specific variable, or how to set environment variables within a particular project? How would that work? Once I see that and I see a lot of upvotes on that, I know, yeah, I need to write a blog post for this. On discoverability for that blog post, I know Stack Overflow will always rank top, but at least I could try to come in second. And that's enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's enough motivation for me. And to your point, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Reddit is another good one that's very similar.
Hmm.
Stack Overflow is clearly more geared towards developers, but there's a lot of people going to Reddit to post these kind of questions too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there are some subreddits that are very like programming and developer focused. You go into like the subreddits for some JavaScript frameworks, a lot of questions in there. Also, you look at another way to find out blog posts, but this probably wouldn't apply to tutorials, more around like think pieces or like thought pieces, would be to look at RFCs of technologies, of major technologies. So you look at the current open React RFCs and you try to get in the mind of the author. Think about, what are they trying to change? Are they trying to introduce a new concept to React? Does it make sense? Shouldn't should they embark on such initiative? That could form like a blockbuster post. Most times it will end up controversial, but at least you would get people thinking even deeply about the problem and
And
about
even
a
yourself,
potential
right?
solution.
And
Yeah, even
that's a
yourself.
healthy exercise to try to think through the problem. What are they trying to solve?
Yeah, exactly. That also works. And just like you said, I think the last point not the last one, the second to the last one, um, is social media, right? So being more intentional about discovering challenges that developers face, and they put it on social media, especially on Twitter. I find a lot of developers frustrated about how to do, certain things or use certain technologies and softwares, and they put their frustration on Twitter. And for me, I see that as an opportunity. I'm like, here goes my next blog post. Maybe not the next blog post, but at least it goes in the backlog
Yeah,
of
exactly.
potential of potential blog posts. Um, so that's also one way to get ideas, content ideas. The last one, this I always have on my list, but I almost never use it because I always find the topic from these other sources, is to look at Google Trends and Google search, right? What are people searching for on the internet? Most times you would need a bit more specific search query or specific search term, and you can see the volume of that search query over time. And that should tell you, are people understanding this? Are there enough resources out there to help clarify this, right? I recently wrote a blog post about using aggregating API requests with axios.org. I'd found a lot of blog posts in the past that had talked about it. There's even documentation about it, right? But after writing that blog post, I think it took off for some reason, right? It was more practical. It's
Yeah,
ranked like higher, and it keeps getting like views. And I'm expecting it to stop getting views one day, but it still hasn't, right?
that's amazing.
That just says, a lot of people are constantly facing the same problem, and maybe I'm helping them solve it better. And that definitely came from looking at Google Trends.
Yeah. One I just thought about too is people running into issues using error messages. Because I'm just thinking about the amount of times I try to Google an error message where, sometimes it'll bring up like a GitHub issue, right? But other times there's nothing close to that. So being able to use
Yeah,
error message as part of that strategy is a great idea.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. Especially error messages for frameworks and tools that are not common, that are not like commonly used. I
Yeah,
know I know how many times I've closed like a Docker environment because I don't know what happened. It's like I tried, it's not working. I'm
yeah.
like, peace, I'm
Throw it all
out.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this is not for me. I'll go use like Zeta instead of trying to have my own, you know, Dockerized MongoDB instance or a Postgres instance. I'll use a cloud service for that. So yeah, looking at error messages, that's definitely one way to find out ideas for blog posts. Um, moving on to the next question. What are the important metrics you use to determine success for your content? How do you track, or what metrics do you track for your content when you write?
Yeah, so I'll just be honest, like I don't dive too deep into the metrics of my content. I usually play the long game for the SEO related stuff, and I try to just
Hmm.
build quality content that I know is going to solve people's problems. Um, that said, some of the metrics that are important, page views are of course very important, but you want to also pay attention to the engagement of that page. So things like how long is somebody staying on the page? Because if you have a ton of views, but people are only staying on the page for a second or two, that means they're not reading it, right? So that's not going to help people. And Google can actually see that. They can see how long you were on that page. If there's Google Analytics or if they're going back and forth with the browser, they're able to determine that and see that people find that content engaging and use that as part of its rankings.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. I also track page views, and I track I track the engagement on posts. Previously, there was the bounce rate you could track on pages. That's if you have like Google Analytics. But with GA4, you get engagement rate, so you see like how long a reader spends on the page. And for those that host like their blog posts on several developer publishing platforms like dev.to. I think on there you just mostly get views, and
Yeah.
you can see views of your post over time. In the case of that, a way I track, I track engagement, or I track an important metric I track on a blog post is the interaction with the URLs and the CTAs on that post. So if the post is a tutorial to try out Cloudinary, for instance, and I have a link to sign up on Cloudinary, right? I would most likely, if I know someone at Cloudinary, I would add a UTM parameter to that link,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, if it's on my blog, I can always track the clicks to that link. And that tells me, even if someone spends time on the page, but they never went to Cloudinary, then I would feel some type of way, right? Especially for like new. Exactly. I would feel some type of way, or if the CTA is to check out another blog post or see a follow-up post or to sign up for something, and they never do that. I'm like, okay, so I guess this post doesn't convert, even though it has like a really high SEO ranking. So I also look at like the conversion on I look at the conversion on the CTAs. On the other hand, I also console myself with the fact that a developer could be building and using the blog post as a guide. So they probably don't need to click the CTAs there. They already have a Cloudinary account. That's the consolation I give to myself. But ultimately, I want to see people engage with with those links
For sure.
on the blog post. Yeah. Um, so this is definitely like a follow-up to the previous question, which is like, what do you do when you create content? I know you play the long game, so do I, and I think that's what's most important, especially with SEO focused content. You would want to look at 3 months to 6 months into the future. Sometimes you would have to wait for like 9 months. It's like a baby,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, but what happens after this much time and this content, it's created to generate like some traffic to like a website or to your website, or you wrote this as a piece for the marketing team, but it receives low engagement. It has like very few views. What do you do?
So I think you would have to, at that point, kind of evaluate what you were trying to do, and what the problem ultimately is. Is it an SEO issue? Like, is it just not ranking well, or is it the engagement issue where people might be clicking through and just bailing right away, right? So I think
Yeah.
the first thing is to identify what is that issue. I'm noticing you said receives low engagement, so that's the specific issue we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so then at that point, it's hard. I usually try to get feedback from others, because like if I'm looking at an article and it feels good to me, that's going to be my perspective, right? But clearly other people don't feel that way if it's not helping others. So how can I get a perspective from somebody else that might make me think about it a little bit differently?
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely does make sense. I think like having it evaluating the blog post, right? Trying to understand. Also, something I do is look at similar blog posts. I try to search for that post, right, as close to the title as possible. Search for it on Google, right? So just imagine searching for the title of your blog post on Google, but it's not on the first page. It's on the second page, and there are other blog posts with exactly the same title, right, that are already ranking higher than yours for some reason, right? That probably says, maybe you need to tweak the title, or you need to tweak the next titles, or before you even create the content, you need to check that title to be sure someone doesn't have like something almost similar on a more popular platform.
Yeah. And you also got to kind of think about like again to the engagement part, is your title being deceptive? So what I mean by that is, are you trying to get people to click through just to click through, but you're not actually solving the problem in the title? Now, there's different forms of content strategies, but generally in our world, when we're trying to write technical content like this, we're trying to do it ultimately to solve that problem, not just simply get views to the page. So how can we help make sure that we're paying attention to what we're solving in that title, or at least changing the title to reflect that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I 100% get frustrated when I see a title that should solve my problem, but it's either purely marketing with 3 paragraphs leading me to try, a product, or it just deviates from the title and talks about something totally unrelated. That definitely I'm done.
Yeah. And that'll lose credit. Like the next time somebody sees your link in the search results, you're losing credibility with those people. So they're not going to want to keep going to your blog if they keep
Yeah.
seeing that it's either low quality or deceptive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's true. So those are like the top questions I have. And the next one is, where can readers find you, and links to stuff you've created? I guess, having shared all these super tips, a lot of people want to learn from you, both those that
Yeah.
would read, that would watch the stream after now.
Yeah, so all my technical content that I write is on spacejelly.dev. I also create the YouTube videos for each of my blog posts, so that's youtube.com/colbyfayok.
Yeah, I'm just going to type it in the comment here.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. How did you get the custom URLs?
For YouTube?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if maybe like I don't have a huge channel by any means. So I've had the Colby Fayok one for a while. I think that just requires like 1,000 subscribers or something. I honestly
Oh,
don't know very much about how that works.
yeah. All right, that's cool. Lastly, do you have any advice for, for upcoming technical writers?
I think for me, one of the most challenging things was getting over the imposter syndrome of all this. Who am I to write? Like, why should I write something on that? And going back to what Atila said earlier, we all have our unique perspective on these things. So being able to like realize that you're going to be able to help somebody in a different way that somebody else could, is a really big motivator for me. And how can you take that and apply it to your content creation process?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. Getting past that initial phase and writing introduction.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be perfect the first time. Just
Yeah.
get something out there, and the more
Hmm.
you write, the easier it'll get.
Yeah, true. I like to say, if you go back, to the very first blog post you wrote, and you're not embarrassed by it, like totally embarrassed, then you haven't gone like really far. You're not learning
Yeah,
enough yet.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like Kobe said, get started with writing. Just write something. Um, we yesterday we outlined a number of processes and ways you could ensure your content meets certain qualities. There are tools out there. You can reach out to folks to help review your content, but just write. And for me, I would say the best way to get better at writing is to just keep writing. Just write. Whatever it is, you find out like an idea, it's even as short as 600 words, 800 words, just write. And while you're writing, also read, because that way, you also like improve your vocabulary. You learn of new concepts, new technologies, new ways to communicate even better. Right. So I would say, as Kobe said, get started with writing, and I would say just keep writing. Keep writing. You could find like a cadence, maybe a weekly cadence to write, or a monthly cadence, but just keep writing. Yeah, and read as well.
Exactly. It's just
Yeah.
like, anything that's skill based, right? Like sports, for instance. Practicing is just going to keep getting you better and better. And even watching professionals do it, right? Like you're learning
Yeah.
something by watching them play. So practicing over and over, that's just going to make you a better writer.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat here that says, must you be an SME before you can write as a newbie? What's SME?
I think that's subject matter expert, and absolutely not.
Oh,
I encourage you to write as early as you can. The more you write, like you're learning in public, and you're helping enforcing what you are learning. There's just so many benefits to it.
yeah. Totally agree 100%. You don't have to be an expert at something. Just imagine explaining something to your friend and they ask you, hey, can you write this down for me? Right? So I do not forget it. Just see a blog post as that, you explaining something to your friend. But then again, you shouldn't write it like you're talking to your friend. You would, yeah,
Well,
you
maybe
would.
that's their unique voice, right?
Yeah, true. Exactly. If you can find your unique voice. I mean, I've read some blog posts that they're both funny and they are catchy. They tell a story, right? And people love stories. So if you can find a way to communicate a concept as a story, be sure you're going to get the most engagement on the blog post.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, just keep writing. Something as simple. What's the simplest thing? I don't like to use the word simple because it's not really that simple. But yeah, the most straightforward things that you could think about when it comes to say web technology, um, it's been written multiple times over, but you can as well just write it one more time. You have nothing to lose, I would say.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Um, anyways, I can't see any more questions in the comments, but this has been a really great session and also eye-opening. I think now the participants are armed with what to build, how to write, and how to stay consistent with writing. So yeah, I have a really good feeling about this. And if anyone still has like questions or there's still something that's unclear, we're always hanging out on Discord, and we are going to answer any questions. And I think that should be it um, for this piece. Thank you very much, Colby.
Thanks
And
again for having me.
yeah, and on this note, I think I would like to kick off the hackathon properly. So yeah, so um, we've officially kicked off. You can go on now to kickstart a repository, build something using Cloudinary and Zeta and any other technology you feel like using. Um, like we said earlier, you do not have to be an engineer to participate, but to win, you would have to be an engineer. Something we've seen is you can collaborate with someone else and you're either like a co-author, you contribute your skills, and you both write a blog post. And Attila just said he sent out invites to Zeta, so you can check out Zeta. Cloudinary has a very generous free tier. You can create an account on Cloudinary right away. After now, I'll send out an email with resources on how to use Cloudinary and how to use Zeta, so you're well informed. And if there are any questions, you can also ask us on Discord. Um, just a little bit going over like the hackathon, like some of the rudiments of it. As just like every other event, there will be prizes at the end. So we have like $1,000 for the first place. We have $800 for the second place and $500 for third place. And the top 50 participants that created content will also get $100 each for writing. So there's almost no downsides to this. Just write and create content. The criteria for winning, as said earlier, is to use Cloudinary and Zeta in your content. We have a lot of swag from the good folks at Netlify, and we also have Hackmamba swag. I'm sure I can get some from Colby over time.
We'll see. No, I'm just kidding. Of course.
Yeah, so we have a lot of swag to go around to everyone. Let's try to have as much fun, tweet about the event so we can also inspire other people to join in the next edition and subsequent events like this. I want to use this opportunity to thank Cloudinary, Zeta, Netlify, and Uniform for coming together to put up something like this. It's really amazing to have folks, organization in technology organizations that support initiatives like this. Next, there's going to be facilitation for all the participants. So on Discord, there are already facilitators that would help unblock you if you have any issues. So if you have any questions, you can either put that in your groups, or you could put that on the general channel and someone will definitely pick it up. The groups are there for you to collaborate with other members of the community, get to know each other, share ideas. You can work on a demo together, or you can, work on a number of ideas together. We would also, in the email I would send later, I would include a document that contains potential ideas you could work on, right? So in different sectors, from building SaaS applications to fintech applications. Last year we saw a lot of e-commerce, features and products being built with Cloudinary. So you could also like try them out, and the facilitators are going to be there to help ensure that you're well informed. After you're done creating the content, you would submit the content along with the code, so along with a link to the GitHub profile that hosts the code. And once that's completed, we would review the code, we would review the content to select a winner. The hackathon will officially close on the 4th of November. So you have ample time to think about an idea, build a very nice demo for it, and write about it. Obviously, we would be checking for plagiarism, and we would disqualify anyone that's found plagiarizing existing content or existing code. So it has to be original. Periodically, we would check in with everyone to make sure everything is going as planned. And if you have any issues or challenges, either with the community or with the program, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You could send me a DM on Discord. You can find me on Discord at ichulo. If you do not find me on Discord, you can send me a DM on Twitter, still at ichulo, and I would reply as soon as I find that. So on this note, thank you very much, everyone, for this stream, and I look forward to us building and writing really amazing stuff.
I was half expecting you to pop one of those bottles in the back.
Yeah, I think I'll do that on the 4th of November.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Yeah, and I have a number of questions here that says, what's the deadline for submission? So the deadline for submission is the 4th of November. After it's submitted, we would review the content. We would provide feedback to you. The content should be written on Dropbox paper. So it's paper.dropbox.com. And we typically use that wrongly. And we use Dropbox because with Dropbox, you can export the content to Markdown. It allows collaborative editing. You can also export it to PDF. And all the images you put there, you automatically get them hosted on Dropbox for you. So you do not have to think about hosting your images elsewhere.
And
if
it's
you do
free,
not want,
right?
yeah, it's just on your Dropbox account. You can also use Cloudinary too. Yeah, that could be a fun thing to do. Make an editor that lets you write, and all the images you put there, when you export them, they are automatically hosted with Cloudinary, optimized, and all that. Yeah, I just gave you guys a really nice idea. So yeah, you could build a Dropbox paper alternative, but for this event, you're going to be writing in Dropbox paper. That way, the facilitators and everyone can review your content. So the content will be reviewed to make sure it meets certain quality requirement. That way, we ensure you publish something that's, something that's really good. On where you would publish the content, eventually, after we're done with reviews, you would publish them on dev.to. So it's going to be a community blog post. We'll just ensure they meet like certain guidelines. We have a Hackmamba organization on dev.to, so you would just publish that there so we can make like any changes if we're unable to reach you at any time. So yeah, that's it on the deadline for submission and where to publish the content. Yeah, so how many publications can one write? So you're allowed to write one article. So typically you can enter one article into the competition, but if you feel like writing 3 or 4 within this time, you're really motivated, please go ahead. Actually, we would help review all that content, but you would only be eligible to enter one. So pick the best out of all the articles you write within this time and send that in, submit that in for the event, and the rest we will just provide feedback on the content. Yeah, so I can't see any more questions. So without further ado, we'll be on Discord. You can find myself, you can find Colby, you can find Atila, as well as the other facilitators in the groups. And as we build, we share all these on social media. We would randomly be giving out all the swag I'm going to get from Colby. We'll be giving them out to all the participants of the event. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and thank you very much, Colby.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody for joining.
Yeah,
looking excited. I'm super excited to see what everybody's going to build.
Yeah, same here. I'm excited as well. All right. Have a nice day, everyone, and cheers.